Hello, class. You kind of got lucky and had a longer presentations than I thought they would be. What they were all good, so you guys did a really good job. I will try to get those graded as soon as I can, hopefully by like Wednesday or Thursday. Um, so instead, we're just going to go through the short types of consideration presentation. So you have this, then you have the video on 8.2, and then the two reteach assignments to get done, and then you are done for the day. So let's go ahead and go through different types of considerations. So, a consideration in general is what a person demands and generally must receive in order to make his or her promise legally binding. Consideration can take form as money, physical objects, services, or promise actions. There are three elements to consideration. So you have a promise from each party, an exchange of something, and then it has to have value of some sort in the eyes of the law. So let's kind of look at each of those three things. So a promise. So the few definitions you need to know as far as law is concerned is the promisor is the person making the promise. The promisee is to who the promise is being made. Consideration is needing to make a promise legally binding. Forbearance is agreeing not to exercise a legal right. Since it has legal value, forbearance would be considered a consideration. Uh, a gift, so consideration versus a promise to gift. So a gift is a transfer of ownership without receiving anything in return. So it's typically a promise to gift is not enforceable. After a donor, the person giving the gift intentionally transfers the gift to the donee, a person receiving the gift. The donee accepts, then the transaction becomes legally binding. So you basically can't give someone a gift and then say, hey, I'm going to take this back from you. So let's watch this quick video to kind of look at a promise to make a gift, right? So a little bit of clarification on that.
Ready for a challenge? Here is another example. It's a real case, too, though I am adapting the details for when this occurred in the 1800s, just to get the money up
I
to
really like this
today's
guy.
standards.
I hope I'm
We
as
have a
cool as
rich
he is
uncle who
one day.
is very fond of his nephew. But his nephew, he thinks, a young man, he's late adolescent. He kind of runs in bad company. And he needs to get his act together. So what he says, look, I'll give you $250,000 when you reach the age of 21 on condition that in the next few years, before you are 21, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't swear, and you don't gamble. Well, the nephew keeps to these terms all that time. He doesn't smoke, drink, gamble, and come 21, he wants his money. Now, may I say, in the meanwhile, the good hearted uncle had died. And who the nephew was suing for the money are his lawyers and his heirs. And though the uncle may have been minded to give the money, the lawyers are more hard hearted and they say, we're not going to give you this money. Why? Because it was simply a promise to make a gift. And our law does not enforce promises to make gifts. So, if you want to make a gift, make your gift. Once you make your gift, or you hand over the $250,000, or you hand over the silver watch, or you hand over the house, well, that's fine. You've transferred it. Now it belongs to the other person. But a promise to make a gift, we're not going to bother with. You can't take that to court. Well, you know what happened in this case? You know who won?
So there you go. So once the gift is transferred, it's legally binding. If it's just a promise, it's typically not enforceable, right? So I could promise you guys all $1 million if you get A's, but if I don't actually give you the $1 million, it's not enforceable, right? I'm not gonna do that. Not even gonna promise that. But so you kind of get the gist of things. So next we look at legal value. All right. So legal value, there's been a change in the party's legal position as a result of the contract. So most commonly this is found in this form, and it's an exchange where each person benefits, right? So an example is you watch your neighbor's dog for a week, your neighbor in return give you $100. You guys are exchanging something with each other. Well, there is another term called detriment, which is a forbearance of a legal right. So, in other words, it's a promise to refrain from doing something you have the legal right to do. So, we kind of look at that last example, the video we just watched, or this, your uncle pays you $10,000 not to drive until you're 25. You have the legal right to drive, right? You can drive once you're 16, but he's paying you not to drive from the age of 16 until you're 25. And in return, he's going to give you $10,000. So by foregoing your right to drive, you get $10,000, right? So that would be a detriment, something you are allowed to do, but you don't do, so you don't get the money. Where you get the money? I don't know. If I was 16, that's a tricky one. So that's one just to think of just by yourselves. Like, 16, but they'll give me $10,000 if I don't drive until I'm 25. I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. I drove too much when I was a teen. I don't know that I could do it. Then you're in college or a career. Yeah, I don't know if I could do it. Adequacy of consideration. So let's look at this. So when giving consideration, it needs to not be equal economic value. Okay. So values of what people place on the same property may widely vary. So think of it, if you are outside on a hot day, maybe you're at a concert and it's super hot and you really just want some ice water. Well, they might charge you more for that ice water on a really hot day than, say, if you were to go to a concert now when it's nice and cool and you're not going to need as much. So that would be an example of not having equal economic value. Um, it also shouldn't represent a misrepresentation, fraud, duress, etc. So if a consideration is received by one party and it's so grossly inadequate, the contract will be declared unconscionable and void. Right. So you can't like just totally rip someone off or do something where it's like so one sided that there's no way that this would ever fly. Right. You would have had to have been taken advantage of, right? It must have been fraud. You must have been under some kind of pressure. It must have been misrepresented. So while economic value isn't always a consideration, uh, unconscionable actions, so gross unfairness or oppression, um, is going to be considered by court. So that's something that, again, you might be able to take advantage somewhat of something. If it's a hot day, jack up the prices. If it's cold, maybe jack up the prices for hot cocoa or something like that. But if it's something so, you know, inadequate, then it's not going to fly in court. So that is kind of, oh, we got one more slide. Sorry. Nominal consideration. So that's the token amount identified in a right in contract. So sometimes you'll see on like Facebook Marketplace or like just ads in general, and you'll see like new car, $1, right? So this is kind of what would be considered nominal consideration. So it's where parties either cannot or do not wish to state the amount precisely. So it's typically stated as $1. So if you see an ad for a car for $1, do they have to sell that to you? No, it's just saying it's not a free car. So generally, they don't know what the cost is, or they're wanting you to kind of make an offer for it, but it's not something that they have a set hard price on. So it's normally meant to spark negotiations versus you seeing that dollar price tag and like, oh, this is what I get this for. All right, so that is today's lecture. Hope you guys are having a good day. We will have the judge in Wednesday. The judge is in Wednesday, so be ready for that. I'm looking forward to it, and I will just see you guys here in the next day or so.